Welcome, everyone, to the Educational Web Series sponsored by Matrix Integrated Solutions. Today, we're going to be talking about mobile sales and mobile field application to record orders and sales in an environment where you have people traveling and out visiting customers. And that's brought to us today by ScanForce. They're going to take on this presentation and tell us all about their solution to meet that need. So, Brian, I'll turn it over to you and let you run with it.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. Yeah, so Brian Berry here over at ScanForce, and I'll be your tour guide today. So I'm just going to dive right in and give you a real quick overview. I know that we've done other presentations in this same series with Matrix, so this may be a little bit of repeat info on the very front end for some folks, so I won't debate this stuff too much. But we've been around for the better part of 2 decades. Over 800 installations, 8,000 users banging away on the system every day. So I always like to tell people it's not our first rodeo. You're not going to be a guinea pig. Our software has been put through the paces many, many times. We grew out of the Sage 100 world, so we've always been Sage 100 focused. And so you have a strong confidence that our software is very solid, very sound. It's been around for a long time. And if there was anything wrong, one of those 8,000 users probably found it by now. Okay, so when we're talking about mobile sales, we'll be talking about several different uses. As Jeremy mentioned, this can be used by outside field reps. So if you have a sales rep that goes and sit in someone's office and they're sitting across the desk from a customer, they want to be able to communicate about inventory levels and orders and invoices and things like that intelligently and have direct feedback back into Sage. Well, we can provide that in either a connected or a disconnected environment. And what I mean by that is the device could have a cellular component so that you have a real-time connection back into Sage so you can look things up that are literally up to the second. Or we can download information, synchronize information to the handheld application on the tablet or computer. And then when they are in front of the client, they don't necessarily have to have that real-time information. So everything that they have will be as real time as their last update. So when they left the office that morning or left home that morning, they could sync, and then everything is updated at least to that day. Okay. And as I mentioned, everything is direct right into Sage. Our application runs right beside Sage. We control all of the inputs. And so it'll be essentially transparent to your users when they're using our mobile applications versus sitting at a desktop that's tied directly back into Sage. It's going to look and feel very much the same, but we greatly simplify our screens over what Sage has to make them a little bit easier to view. So just at a glance to let you know our background, we have really two components. We have a warehouse management system and we have the mobile sales system. And they can work in concert with one another, work together, or they can be completely separate. So obviously with the warehouse automation, that's not the focus of today, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention it to you. So doing basic things like receiving POs, shipping sales orders, doing a physical count, keeping track of inventory movements from one bin to the other. Since I mentioned bins, we, ScanForce, wrote in conjunction with DSD, which is a programming house for Sage, we wrote the Sage multi-bin solution. So we have a lot of clients, including some that may be listening to this now, that may be using that DSD/ScanForce multi-bin solution. Sage looked at our solution, adopted it as their own. So if you want to keep track of items in more than one place in your warehouse, so if you have a pick bin and an overstock bin or an overflow bin, then our multi-bin solution gives you that visibility. It can be used with or without the actual barcode scanning component as well. But we came here today to talk about mobile sales. So we're going to be looking at entering orders and quotes and invoices and that sort of thing. So let me move on. Let me give you a brief background on the platform. So the application development tool that was used to build both our warehouse management system and the mobile sales, it's been around for a long time. We designed it from the ground up to work with Sage 100, works with Android devices, iOS, which is Apple, and of course, Windows. It's very scalable. In fact, you can see down below, there's some users that have over 1,000 devices. So don't think that you're going to tax the system. Names like FedEx that's out there using it in their sorting facilities. Excuse me. So the system is very powerful and very scalable. It's also very, very fast. Now, I won't beat this one to death, but basically several years ago, we did what was called a million record challenge. We loaded a million records into Sage, and we asked the handheld application to find one specific piece of data. It returned that in less than 0.03 seconds, which is just screaming fast. Okay. So don't think they're going to be worried about latency and things of that nature. Our system is designed to be very quick. Okay? We partner with a lot of the people that are partners in the broader Sage 100 world. So you may recognize some of these names as clients or as vendors that you deal with today. There's a good chance that we have some ability to combine what you're doing today with what we're doing. So let's talk specifically about mobile sales now. What is it? It allows you to do things disconnected from your in-office Sage environment. So take Sage with you if you'll think of it that way. It's primarily used on a tablet, primarily used on an iPad because that's what most tablets are. So think about your salesperson carry around either an iPad mini or a full iPad, whether it's the Wi-Fi version or the cellular version, all of them will work. And they can generate quotes, they can generate orders, invoices, credit memos, things of those nature, all while they're visiting with the client. Okay. You can also capture signatures. You can print receipts or even email receipts. So think about the power of having your salesperson sitting in your customer's office and they say, I want 2 of those and 3 of these. And they can simply, salesperson turns the tablet around and says, is this what you want? And they say yes. They can sign for it, print, hit the button. If you're real time with cellular, that's printing a pick ticket back in the office so they can be pulling that order while you're still in the office. And you could say, would you like me to email you a copy of that receipt, Mr. Customer? That's pretty powerful. Makes you look very good in front of your client, very high tech, very slick. So again, whether you have that constant data connection or not, the system will still work. And I'll explain all that when we get to the live demo part. Okay. So some highlights, this can work on a generic iPad or any other tablet. It can also work on some rugged devices. So there are some manufacturers that make rugged tablets that have military drop specs and IP ingress protection ratings and all that cool stuff. If you have a specific need, please let Jeremy or one of the other folks there at Matrix know. We can have a one-on-one conversation. They'll set up a call between yourself and myself, and we can talk about your needs. We'll find the right hardware to fit your environment. Okay. So I mentioned that before, we could do quotes, orders, invoices, credit memos, things of that nature. You can also limit the things that they do. I'll tell you about that as well. For instance, you may say, I don't want them doing credit memos in the field. Well, we can inhibit that view from the screen. Okay. Wouldn't it be cool if while you were sitting talking to your customer, you could instantly check stock and say, oh, yes, I have that in my, you know, California warehouse, or, I have that down in Texas. I can have that shipped up to you. Again, it makes you look better in front of the client. It gives you our salespeople a lot of power right at their fingertips. You can load up any sort of customer specific pricing that's in Sage. That's going to pull through. You can check their purchase history. If they say, hey, what's going on with that last order I placed last week? Well, you can pull that up and tell them instantly. You can have images there, so you can flip the tablet around and say, is this the part that you're thinking about? I mentioned capturing signatures and printing receipts, all that's good stuff. The big thing here is we're integrating directly into Sage 100. It's like your sales reps are carrying Sage 100 around with them everywhere they go. Now, how we sell this, it's sold as a standalone component separate from our warehouse management system. So some of you that are listening to this, you may already have our WMS, or you may already have a multi-bin, or both. This is a standalone module, okay, that's sold separately. It's typically sold as that software as a service model, or in the Sage world, it's a subscription philosophy, but it can be sold as a perpetual. In fact, our warehouse management system is quite often sold as a perpetual purchase as opposed to subscription. And if someone wants to purchase both, we can build both of them in as one purchase. And quite often our clients will put those both on a lease at the same time if they want to go that route. So we're very flexible with how the product is packaged and sold. Now, some quick advantages to the product, some pain points, if you will, things that we can do. Eliminating errors is huge because, as you all know, in this environment that we live in, everything has gotten more expensive. So the cost of inventory, the cost of labor, everything has been ratcheted up. So the cost of an error also has been ratcheted up. So creating an error now is a lot more costly than it would have been a couple of years ago. So eliminating errors is a bigger dollar saving than it has been in the past, and even more important because we're giving you the access directly to the data coming out of Sage, things like part numbers, things like pricing, things like what are open invoices that they need to be looking at. These are all things that we can put right there at the fingertips. So your sales rep won't be misspeaking or misquoting something that they misremembered from the last time they looked at Sage. Okay. It's also extremely efficient. Instead of writing things down, waiting till they're back in the office or back home in the evening and writing things up and emailing or faxing if anybody still faxes, we eliminate all that. It can be very, very real time, just like you were sitting on the phone back in the office taking this order on the phone, except now you're face to face. All the benefits that that brings. Okay, but again, doesn't require the constant connection like a website or a web browser would do. It can work disconnected, and I'm going to show you that in just a moment when we get to the live demo. Okay, so the kind of people that use it, obviously a field rep. That's who we've been talking about primarily. That person that goes out and sits across the desk from a client and has that one-on-one conversation. But do you have a counter sales environment where customers walk up and they say, I need two of these and three of those? Well, instead of constantly going back and forth to the desktop PC, you can actually, as the person in the bottom right is doing, you can walk around with your client with a tablet and say, yes, I've got 37 of those here. And if you need more, I've got more in my southern warehouse. I can have them shipped in a couple of days. All that power is going to be right at your fingertips. Trade shows, this was something that was a little more important in this PowerPoint maybe a couple of years ago in the pre-COVID world. But if we ever get back to it, think about the power of standing in the booth and someone walks up and says, that's the best thing since sliced bread. I want 10 of those. How quickly can you get them to me? You can enter the order, take a signature capture, and send them an electronic invoice while they're still standing in your booth. It's a very powerful tool. You can also give this to your customers if you have consignment inventory. So if you put your inventory on site with your client for them to consume, rather than waiting for them to let you know what happened and then going after the fact and keying that into Sage, you can let them utilize this software and sign in and have access to only their data, and they can input what they're using in real time. That's just going to speed up the accounts receivable side of the house, which is always a good thing. So the way that the software is built, we definitely did this with the user in mind. Our screens are very intuitive, and you'll see this in just a moment. We don't want the user having to think, now, what do I do next? What's the next step? I don't want to do something now. It's going to mess me up as soon as I hit enter. It's very intuitive. The system guides them step by step through the process. And as I told you before, we're designed to be extremely fast, less than 0.03 of a second fast. Our screens are really simple in the way they're laid out. We give you multi-tab views so you can scroll through the data. Our goal here is to make it easy to train, easy to learn, and easy to adopt. Because if it's easy to use, your people will want to use it. And that way you know your money's well spent and you're going to be able to get all the benefits out of it that we've talked about. Okay. All right. So now let's move on to a demonstration. And let me show you what this actually looks like live. So here's a screen. Imagine you're looking at an iPad and you're holding this in your hand and you have it turned in a landscape view as opposed to portrait. So you get this sort of like a widescreen TV type view. First of all, this logo right here will be your logo. So we want this to be shown to the client while you're face to face with them, whether it's a counter sale or a trade show or sitting in their office with your sales rep. We want them to see your logo here. So that's what's going to show. This section right here is just showing me unsent transactions. So I've done 3 transactions on my handheld that I haven't yet sent back to the office. Now that could be because either I don't have a real-time connection and I'm waiting till I have Wi-Fi. And by the way, Wi-Fi could be at the local Starbucks or McDonald's or something. Doesn't necessarily have to be when you come back to the office. Or if I have the real-time connection, I just haven't hit this sent data or send data button. So right now it's telling me that I have a total of $575 in 3 transactions that are sitting here on my handheld waiting to be sent back to the office in Sage. Now, under transactions, I can do new transactions or review old transactions. And under inquiries, I can look at customer information or item information. So let's start here. Let's look up information about a customer. Again, it's a touch screen. I'm using my mouse. You would be using a finger tap, okay, or a stylus. So this is giving me a list of all of my customers. I can scroll through the list alphabetically, or I can do a search up top. I'm just going to select this one here. And you'll see that this information is going to look very familiar because we're pulling this right out of a Sage file. So this is going to look very consistent to your users. I can see all the basic information here. I can see what their balance due, which is often a good thing to talk about with your client when they're asking you for more stuff. You can always ask for, when are you going to pay your bill? If I click additional down here, I have these four main tabs across the top. The first is main tab. You'll notice everything is grayed out because this again is an inquiry. I'm not looking to change information. I'm just looking up information that exists in the system. Okay. If I look under contacts, I can do a drop down here. I can see I have multiples. I can select the second one and I can see, notes that pull forward out of Sage. If I need to call them and let them know that I'm going to be late for a meeting, I can do that. All the information's right here. Under ship to, this is giving me the ship to number 2. I can flip to ship to number 1 and back and forth if I want to look at that information, if I'm looking up address. And here's the real powerful open transactions. I can look at all the historical data that's in Sage. I can store all that information here on the tablet. This is open invoices, and I can see the aging here from an AR perspective and the total. I could also flip over and look at the open sales order side of things. Okay. And if I'm looking at one particular order, I can highlight it and click the detail button. And now I can drill down and see the individual line items and quantities that are on there. So I'm going to go back and just jump back to my main screen here. So that was customer inquiry. So if I'm a sales rep, I'm in the field, I want to look up information so I can contact this customer or any customer. I can do so right here. I don't have to call the office and say, hey, give me a phone number for so-and-so. It's right at my fingertips. Also, item inquiry, same thing as you would expect right in Sage. I can look up an item. I can select multiple warehouses and view the on-hand inventory and what's available. I don't have an image of a widget, but if I did, it would appear right here. All right, so let's go in and look at a new transaction now. So the first thing it's going to ask me if I'm doing any type of new transaction is who am I doing it for? So I'll go ahead and select that same client that we were doing before. And then if I hit create transaction, it's going to give me a pop-up menu. What type of transaction do I want to enter? And as I told you before, for instance, if you don't want people entering credit memos in the field, if that's more of a management or administrative staff type function back in the office, we could just take this off the list. In fact, if you want to have only quotes and sales orders on this list, we could do that too. Okay, so I'll go ahead and look at the sales order. This is the same header information that you would have seen back in Sage. And as you'll see, I've got ship dates available to me, the warehouse it's going to ship out of, the ship via, the shipping method. I can change that. Terms is one that we get asked about quite often. You may say, Brian, I don't want my salespeople changing the credit terms. I define the credit terms, and I want that to flow downstream. Well, that's fine. We can go ahead and inhibit this field and gray it out. So terms is not something that can be changed in this view. Okay. If I look at addresses, again, I have the 1 and 2. I can toggle between the two and send this one to the Milwaukee location if I want. Under line items, this is where I'm going to select an item and say, I want 2 of those. I'm going to add that to the order. I'll select another one and I'll say, I want 5 of those and add that to the order. And if I'm happy, I can jump over here at the totals page and I've got down the side here the total quantity and the net dollar amounts. And I've got, line by line broken out here. And again, I can spin the tablet around and say, Mr. Customer, is this exactly what you were hoping to see? And if they say yes, I can either take a signature now, or I can go ahead and hit save. And at this point, it's giving me a summary. I can do a signature capture here. And this is about as good as it gets with my mouse. And by the way, that signature will be transferred with this record back into Sage. And if you'd like, the folks at Matrix can help you actually input that on invoices. So that's a little tidbit there. So here I can print a receipt if I have a Bluetooth printer with me, or if I want to print back in the office, I can do that. Or perhaps more powerful, I can hit email and I can choose who gets it. Maybe this person, maybe not that person. okay? And that's going to go directly out to them. So that's how a sales order is entered into the system. I'm going to jump back to the main menu, and now you'll see I have 4 unsent transactions because I had 3 a moment ago. Now, if I go review real quick, I can take a look and see these are 3 open sales orders that I have out here. I can also toggle and look at quotes if I have a quote in the system as well. Okay. At this point, I can hit send data. It's telling me that I'm going to send, 3 of these and 1 of these back to Sage. And now I'm completely synced up and everyone back in the office has all that information. So again, that can happen real time while you're sitting in the office with the customer, or you can wait until you have a Wi-Fi signal at a Starbucks or you're back home or back in the office, and you can synchronize data that way, okay? Now, this refresh data, we haven't talked about that. If you're working in that disconnected environment where we don't have that real-time cellular connection, I can hit this refresh and look at the list of all the things that we're synchronizing. Things like cost, things like customer specific pricing, the purchase history from your clients, open invoices and open orders, different ship tos that may have been changed, tax codes, all these sorts of things that are getting updated. And if I hit refresh, it's going to take a second because, again, I'm working on laptop power, not real Sage server type power. So it takes a second for me. It's a little faster in real life. And now I've synchronized all my data. So I have up-to-date customer information on all their orders, their AR. I have up-to-date inventory level information. So if I do an item inquiry, I know I'm getting the very latest and greatest. Okay. The settings I won't bother with. That's just how we set up things like the printers that you connect to and things of that nature. So that's not a big worry. But that's the basic tool, the ability to look up customer information, item information, review existing transactions, enter new transactions. And again, you determine the types of transactions that you want the users to be able to utilize, how to send the data back and sync up with Sage, and how to refresh the data so when you go out in the morning, you have all the latest and greatest inventory information available to them. So that's the basics of the system. And at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Jeremy and try to get the slide to move. There we go. So Jeremy, did any questions resonate for you while we were talking through this?
Yeah, a couple came in while we were going. I guess the first question is hardware wise,
Sure.
what type of hardware does it run on? And if we have an existing iPad, can we use that hardware to accomplish mobile sales?
Oh, sure, absolutely. So if you've got an iPad and you're already using it for some other purpose, you could certainly repurpose it for this. So it'll work on something existing. It doesn't have necessarily have to be the latest and greatest. So again, we can work on Windows devices, iOS, which is Apple devices, or Android devices. Typically, this mobile sales application is used in a tablet form because it's a little small on a phone. Can be done, but it's a little smaller. It's a little bit more impressive to show it to a client when it's on a larger screen like a tablet. But yes, you can use existing hardware.
Got it. Then how does this work with WMS? I know you said it's sold separately.
Yes.
That alludes to it being separate as a whole. Can you tell us how it works together if it does at all?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'd love to. So it can be used standalone. So we have clients that use mobile sales that don't do any barcode scanning or warehouse management stuff in the warehouse. Okay. Likewise, we have customers that do barcode scanning, warehouse management stuff that don't do mobile sales. But then we have the mixture of the two. For instance, anyone that has a counter sales environment. Okay. So now your person at the counter sales doesn't have to be tied to the counter. You can walk around with the client and the client can say, I want 2 of these and 3 of those, and you can enter that on a tablet, take the signature capture right there, sync it up, send it to Sage, and then one of 2 things can happen. So if you're using the WMS, a pick ticket can be generated, and then someone in the warehouse may have to get on a forklift or a man lift to go get something and bring it down. The point is we're speeding up the process. So if the 2 are combined, we can sort of they're quote unquote integrated through Sage. So the order gets entered in WMS, it goes into Sage, boom, pick tickets printed, we start picking that so the customer that's waiting at the counter doesn't have to wait any longer than they have to. Okay. So yes, the two can certainly work in concert together, or they can work independently.
Got it. Got it. Um, as far as support goes,
Mhm.
do they get supported through Matrix? Do we help in that, or is there a support helpline from ScanForce?
Certainly, the folks at Matrix, if that's your first line of support, you can always talk to them, but our door is always open. We very much pride ourselves in our support. If you ask anyone at Matrix or anyone in the larger Sage 100 world, then there's a really good chance they're going to brag about ScanForce support because that's something that we really harp on. So unlike a lot of software companies, we do not limit support contacts at any level of our offerings. So any of the offerings that you purchase from ScanForce through Matrix come with unlimited support contacts. So you can call our phone number, you can send an email to support@scanforce.com, and those will get addressed. There's no limit to the number of contacts. Okay. And I often say we measure support response times in hours, if not minutes, certainly not days. So I think that you'll find there our support is far above the norm in the software world.
Great to know. I guess I had one more question that kind of came to my mind, which was hardware wise, is barcoding and scan barcode scanning incorporated into mobile sales, and how does that work if it
Yes, it
does?
can be. It can be. So there are tablets that are made that have built-in barcode scanners. So from a counter sales perspective, you could literally walk back in the racks and scan items. Okay. There are sleds that are made for different types of tablets like iPads that have integrated barcode scanners. There's even like some Bluetooth options that are out there that are available. So yeah, absolutely, scanning can be done when you're doing those item inquiries and adding items to sales orders and quotes.
Got it. I think that's all we have for today. And so,
Okay.
Brian, I want to thank you for your time and energy
Absolutely.
to present mobile sales to us. Certainly from the crowd, if there's any questions that you have that didn't get answered, please feel free to contact me. My contact information is up on the screen. So jeremy.russell@matrixintegrated.com or call us at 330-777-0650, and we'll get the right parties together to answer anything you